How you doing, YouTube? Matt with Massive Beer Reviews. Back with yet another review. A little bit of Bonn Place time. That's right. A little Bonn Place Brewing. Proper glassware. Hashtags and shit. In the form of their Nattmara. It's a 7.5% spruce tip in maple-based Shwarzbier. I think that's what we're going for. Baltic Porter? Maybe not really. Shwarzbier? Somewhere right around there. Shwarzbier. Let's go with that. I'm kind of flirting the lines at both ends. Now, full disclosure, I have had this before. Where? I've had it at Bonn Place. It's pretty much where you get all their beers. But Sam at Bonn, always been one of my favorite places. Always been one of my favorite brewers. I actually went down there about a month or so ago. And I did a brewer interview for my podcast. A brewer close to where he's at, and I was there. I kind of popped over, grabbed a couple beers, cans. He just did his first canning run, and Mooey. I reviewed that. You can go check it out. But I picked this up in a growler, brought it home, and I ended up having kind of like a barbecue, and I opened it. I brought it home because I wanted to review it, because I tasted it at the brewery, and I loved it. But I had to open it for people, and it got drank. But I actually went back to Bonn Place today and did a podcast interview with Sam from Bonn Place. So go check that out. And Beer Massive. I'll post the same day probably when I post that interview. Went back and picked it up again for the sole reason of I want to review it, because when I had it, blew my titties off. So here we go. A little preconceived notion going in the sucker. Anyway, it's Nattmara. It's a 7.5% Shwarzbier / Baltic Porter. Clean glass, nothing else going on. So I like the styling. There we go. Let's give this sucker a chug. I don't think I cleaned this glass all that well. But, we're going to drink it anyway. This thing's spitting at me like it's angry. I kind of like that, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay. So this is actually kind of like, I don't know if it's a legit collab. Like one that was actually marketed, because they don't bottle stuff. They don't really market themselves up there in Bonn. But I think this is kind of a collab with CJ up there at One Pot Back Brewing. They did this, like I said, Schwarzbier, maple syrup, spruce tips. Let's have at it. Pinky finger, keg-colored head. Uniform yet neurotic bubbles throughout. And she's got a rich darkness to it. Not too crazy, more of a mahogany kind of coloring, kind of gleam. Not necessarily like light through the whole beer itself, but when I'm holding it here, I can see through the beer, through the bottom kind of thing. So it's not the murkiest beer in the history of mankind, but she's got a bit of that density. Get a nose. There's a soft smoky malt, a soft, kind of robust sweetness. It's almost like, it's not maple syrup like, it's more kind of erring in the direction of like a blackstrap molasses, to where it has a bit of heft, a bit of savoriness to it. Not that it's overly sweet. And those spruce tips kind of come off more like a resinous, piney hoppiness, but a more subdued fashion. Everything's soft here. Nothing's too crazy. Yeah, it's just soft, rich, decadent, yet at the same time delicious, yet refined. Adjectives. I love the adjectives right now. But yeah, she smells nice. She's not big. I mean, you're talking about Schwarzbier. You're not expecting a huge nose to begin with. So you're getting that base kind of rich, kind of maltiness, with a little bit of those soft adjuncts floating behind it. Smells pretty nice. Let's dive in. Cheers. It just kind of gets you. Kind of jumps out at you and gets you. So you get that rich maltiness. Now, it's got a big roasted malt component to it. It's got a big toasty, roasty maltiness to it. But you get that kind of sweetness, that residual sweetness, that's sweetness from that maple syrup that I was like, okay, it comes off more blackstrap molasses. I think that was a marrying of the malt and the sweetness of the kind of maple syrup, because in the taste you get the distinct bitterness, but you get that big pop of that maple syrup sweetness, and they both kind of cancel each other out. So while you're getting that biting roastiness at the same time, you're getting that nice big maple syrup sweetness. It doesn't come off super cloying, so everything's kind of balanced nice in there. There's a big bittering, old school bittering hop married with that roasted malt kind of bittering component. So while you have that sweetness and while it cancels out that bittering of the maltiness, it just gets a little bit higher with that hop presence in there, that bittering, slightly resinous kind of hop presence. Kind of kick it up a notch, and you get a bit of the spruce tippiness, a little bit of that sappiness. It's definitely kind of in that classic resinous kind of category when it comes to kind of what most people talk about with hops, but I think you're getting it more from that spruce tippiness, or it could just be the way the hops are playing perfectly to kind of give me an illusion of those kind of spruce tips kind of playing bigger than they typically would in a beer. But it's nice, man. This is a really good beer. Like I said, from the get, full disclosure, I am going into this beer totally with a preconceived notion because it just did me so proper when I had it at the brewery. I had to get a growler. I came home and I was too giddy about it to share it. So I'm going into it with those same kind of like, oh, it's going to be great. Now, here's the thing about that. More times than not, and I know this is the case for me, when I'm so excited about a beer, when I go into it the second time, it tends to let me down. I tend to build a bigger memory. I caught a fish this big, but it ends up being a fish this big by the next time I get into it. But I caught a fish this big, and the fish is still that big going back into it. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this beer. So basically, more times than not, going into it a second time, you're let down because your memory thinks of past fondness. Not really getting that here. Still getting that big, rich malt base combined with that nice sweet, the residual sweetness that bounces off all that roasty bitterness and the hop bitterness and that spruce tip. Well, it could be just hops at play in a really kind of kooky, fun kind of manner. I think it's in there, and I think it's playing really well. Nice mouthfeel. Definitely tastes like a Schwarzbier. Doesn't taste like a porter. Doesn't taste like a stout. Baltic porter. Again, what I'm basically trying to say is it has a little bit of lager vibes as far as how it's tasting, and I dig it. I think it's probably one of my favorite non-barrel aged dark beers that I've had in quite some time. And I'll be the first person in a minute. I love a bunch of what Bonn does. So, from a distance, you step back and be like, it's just Bonn Place. Matt has a boner jam for Bonn Place. I think I do. Same way I do for Russian Duck, or same way I do for Kane, and a lot of those breweries. But I think it's warranted. I think the reason why I have those boner jams for those breweries because they treat me well more often than not. So while you try to be as impartial as possible, there's probably a little bit of beer nepotism in there, but at the same time, if it was mediocre or hot shit, I would say so. I don't think it is. So let's talk about it. It's one of the better, darker lagers, Schwarzbiers, whatever you want to call it, in that kind of relative realm that I've had as of late. Yes. Value and availability, brewery only. Go there, get a growler. The growler prices are typically pretty decent, and leave you with, if you like what we like this, if you like bittering, piney, resinous, dark beers with maple syrup. Yeah, sure, that list is about that long. If you like dark beers that are bittering yet sweet, and that are just really cool flavor profile beers, for lack of a better explanation, you'll dig it. Listen, Bonn is Bonn. They do English milds, they do old ales, they do, kind of this old school take on a lot of older beers. But they do a lot of kooky stuff too, in a fun, creative way, not for the sake of being weird. And I don't think this is that weird. I think it just makes sense flavor-wise. So I feel like flavor combination and honest, that would be the word I would give it. Honest, intentioned beer. It's worth giving a whirl. So there we go. Another review in the books. Down there if you want to talk about it. Massive Beers if you want to check me out doing the social media stuff. Beer Massive if you want to check me out doing the whole podcasting stuff. Interviewing Sam from Bonn. Like I said, probably post this same day. So go check that out. BeerMassive.com or your favorite podcasting app. And hopefully you guys enjoyed our review. Hopefully enjoying a nice little Schwarzbier right now. And we'll see you next time. Cheers.